What does it mean to be critical? Critical becomes a goal set out for radical transformation of society to question the objectivity and subjectivity of theory and beliefs involved in traditional theory. Critical can be conceptualized as a way of seeing the world through multiple perspectives that reveal the injustices against the hegemonic and racist systems of operation and power. Critical can mean taking aspects of social, political, intellectual life and deconstructing the powers of control and revealing them to further enhance the possibility of radical transformation. Critical can mean reflective or inherently self-aware. Critical is made up of the collective and individual interest in emancipation and freedom from illusion and autonomy. Through ties of critical thought and theory, I've strung together authors Henry Thoreau, Peter McLaurin, Quentin Wheeler Bell, Pablo Freire, Elizabeth Ellsworth, Jacques Rancière, Trina Minha, Audre Lorde, Nirmala Ervels, and Curry Mella to help narrate the ways in which critical pedagogy is being constructed through action in society through the building of communal ties, protests, dance, poetry, and other forms of expression. As author Giraud would note, it is crucial to recognize that pedagogy has less to do with the language of technique and mythology than it does with issues of politics and power. Pedagogy is a moral and political practice that is always implicated in power relations and must be understood as a cultural politics that offers both a particular version of a vision of civic life, the future, and how we might construct representations of ourselves, other, and our physical and social environment. Through this pedagogy of understanding, the formation of ways of being are being constructed that are guided by one's moral or political practice. These visions and versions of pedagogy become produced and lineate in every direction, to the producing of ideas of morality that are often conflicted or in conversation with hierarchies of belief and power. Critical pedagogy will reject that teaching is a technical practice, but rather is a radical pedagogy, built through moral and political practice, premised on the assumption that learning is not about processing received knowledge, but about actually transforming it as part of a more expansive struggle for individual rights and social justice. This challenges the normality of how and from who we receive knowledge from. How do we create knowledge for ourselves and not for the bourgeoisie? What we learn and how we learn has a goal of disrupting hierarchies that allow the self to build through ways that transform ways of thinking and being. In McLaurin's Seeds of Resistance, she notes, as the global power complex reduces human life and Mother Earth to mere production and consumption, critical revolution eco-pedagogy is developing new unalienated forms of self-presence. Eco-pedagogy is inspired by and inspires a new social arc rooted in practice of ecological struggles by the working classes and the poor. Wheeler Bell would note that traditions collectively remember their past by retelling and telling their story. An example of this in society would be the Zapatista movement that is currently happening in Chiapas, Mexico. The Zapatista uprising stood against the backdrop of colonialism and its legacy, centuries of poverty and inequality, racism, and exploitation. Chiapas, Mexico's southernmost state, is rich in natural resources, but one of the poorest states in Mexico. It has one of the country's largest indigenous populations, along with some of the highest rates of malnutrition, maternal mortality, and illiteracy. The Zapatista structure of indigenous autonomy has extended access to rudimentary healthcare and education to rural villages in Chiapas. The Zapatistas exercise self-determination through local and regional governments and their economic cooperatives, organizing the production of goods, generate resources to invest back into their communities. Women's involvement in the EZLN helped shape the Zapatista movement, which in turn opened new spaces for women and led to dramatic changes in their lives. When the EZLN began organizing in the rural villages of Chiapas, women there experienced an extraordinary level of violence and discrimination. But the Zapatista movement radically redefined gender roles in the context of the Zapatista movement, as women became guerrilla insurgents and political leaders, healers and educators, and members of economic cooperatives.
There's a fine line between love and hate, you see. You can't wait too late, 'cause baby, I'm on it. You can't worry about what another nigga think. Now that's liberation, and baby, I want it. I think I call it love, I think I call it hate. Two roads remain diverged no matter how I contemplate. I try to illustrate what it means to be strong. Paint pictures with my lips in the verses of my songs that differs from the glue, cardboard, and paper that tells his story, limiting me to this category because my progeny are expected to spend some time in their lives confined to a metal menagerie, and the people that approve those prisons get rich like they won the lottery. I think they're bored with me because I'm lower class and not part of the bourgeoisie. But I find solace in the solidarity of my songs, knowing that this nation could never right its wrongs, because blue cemeteries bury the ones that were jettisoned. Cotton is still America's favorite fabric, and no matter how easy it is to assimilate, I prefer to be a maverick.
I began to use the phrase in my work, white supremacist capitalist patriarchy, because I wanted to have some language that would actually remind us continually of the interlocking systems of domination that define our reality, and not to just have one thing be like, gender is the important issue, race is the important issue. But for me, the use of that particular jargonistic phrase was a sort of shortcut way of saying all of these things actually are functioning simultaneously at all times in our lives.
Does it mean that a black, lesbian, feminist, warrior, poet, mother is named the state poet of New York? It means that we live in a world full of the most intense contradictions. And we must find ways to use the best we have, ourselves, our work, to bridge those contradictions, to learn the lessons that those contradictions teach. And that is the work of the poet within each one of us, to envision what has not yet been, and to work with every fiber of who we are to make the reality pursuit of those visions irresistible.
Malala would note, we need to know that because our labor power is in the hands of us, the laborers, and because without it there is no profit, there's no generation of wealth, there's no capitalism. We're a capitalist's weakest link. The task of recognizing the exploitive measures of capitalism is difficult because of the constant coverage of capitalistic propaganda that is sold to make illusions of freedom. These illusions drive us into capitalistic thought and stray us away from ideas of our liberation.
I have dyslexia, a disorder that involves difficulty learning to read and write, and the way that you're looking at me right now is the reason that I hate telling people, because you look at me like a paragraph without punctuation. Like maybe you could understand me if you just took the time, but you see me as something in need of revision. School was an exercise in repetition. Teachers would rather throw me a ball than help me understand what was going on inside of a book. It always felt like I was being trained to fetch, to sit, to roll over, to good dog. Teachers saw me as the runt of the litter, so they rarely, if ever, called on me. But my classmates never stopped calling me slow, stupid, short bus, and I hate feeling stupid. So I learned to crown class. A class clown. To make myself a joke before others could. But sometimes the laughter sounds like sit, like roll over, like bad dog, like you're still stupid. It makes me want to chew on the throats of people that invalidate my intellect because I use the wrong your, but I can't. Because I'm black in America, so I can't give anyone an excuse to put me down. What is being black in America if not an experiment in editing oneself? To be dyslexic is to be a grown man who is still afraid to read out loud. It is the red. The red and green lines below my words is wounds that I can't bandage with spell check. It is to call autocorrect Judas when I know that my mind is the betrayer. My mind plays tricks on me. I can read my Facebook status 500 times and still not to my catched errors. Error to my not catch. I need the words to stop crashing into one another. Feels like I'm reading in an earthquake when nothing sits still long enough to make sense. What do you do when every classroom feels like an aftershock? When you relive stumbling through of mice and men in front of a jury of your adolescent peers, school never taught me to feel worthy of love. So my mother would turn her embrace into a classroom. She would tell me, you are blessed, you are gifted, your mind is anointed, and I know I am, but most days, y'all, my mind feels like a beautiful curse, like the ugliest of blessings. My mother says, boy, regardless of what it is, it's yours, so speak life into it. But speaking life has never been my issue. It's reading and writing it that scares me.
Worth notes, the literature of people who are not in power has always been in danger of extinction or co-option, not because we do not theorize, but because what we can even imagine far less, who we can reach is constantly limited by societal structure. Here it becomes important to acknowledge the importance of the literature that is being created by those who actively engage in critical thought. Through this literature, there is a self-reflective quality that builds on the way that we are able to be part of radical action. Ellsworth further notes, the preferable goals seem to become capable of sustained encounter with currently oppressive formations and power relations that refuse to be theorized away or fully transcended in a utopian resolution, and to enter into the encounter in a way that owned up to my own implications in those formations, was capable of engaging my own relation to and investments in those formations. Audre Lorde further demonstrates the importance of storytelling through the use of poetry. She notes, for women, then, poetry is not a luxury. It is a vital necessity of our existence. It forms the quality of the light within which we predict our hopes and dreams towards survival and change, first made into language, then into an idea, then into more tangible action. Poetry is the way we help give name to the nameless so it can be thought. The farthest external horizons of our hopes and fears are cobbled by our poems, carved from the rock experiences of our daily lives.